Skill followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Heavenly Father, thank you for this time when we can gather together and tend to the business of our county. Father, guide us as stewards of the many blessings you have bestowed on our county and our county's people. Please grant us the wisdom to practice that stewardship in keeping with your commands. Father, please continue to bless our families, our county, and our nation as we move through these times. In Jesus' holy name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May be seated. Okay, next we have the setting of the agenda. If it pleases the board, item 14, where we talk about calling a special budget work session. I'd like to add to that an adjustment to the published FY26 budget calendar to change some dates in April and May. So I'd like to add that calendar change to item 14, if that's acceptable. Is there a motion? Sure. Mr. Carter is so moved. Is there a second? All right, we've added the budget calendar to the budget work session item 14 agenda. Is there approval for the agenda as amended? Mr. Wolfskill's made a motion to approve the agenda as amended. Is there a second? Mr. Carter, second. Mr. Wolfskill? Mr. Carter? Mr. Hips? I vote aye also. The agenda is approved as amended. All right, first up is public comment, citizen public comment period. This time is provided by the board to allow citizens the opportunity to address the board on issues of importance to the citizens. No individual citizen shall be permitted to address the board for more than 3 minutes. Do we have anybody signed up? Nope. All right. Anybody who didn't sign up and wants to make a 3-minute public comment? All right, hearing none, we'll move to appearances. These scheduled times are provided by the board to allow citizens and organizations outside county government to discuss matters of importance with the board. First up is Mr. Mark Cathy, PE, Vice President, Regional Manager of McGill Associates, will present the results of the solid waste future planning comparison study the board commissioned this past summer. Mr. Cathy will be prepared to answer your questions regarding the study, and the your questions meaning the Board of Supervisors, not the audience. Mr. Cathy.
I'm going to speak for just a second.
All right.
Just to bring back around for you, late last summer, I believe you guys commissioned a study for future planning in solid waste, and we went through RFP process, got really good responses from a number of highly qualified firms, and Mr. Cathy with McGill Associates, they were the ones we chose, and they've been working since, I guess, late fall, working on us, and Mr. Cathy's here to present the results.
Thank you, Mr. Rourke.
Thank you for having me. Can you hear me okay? Okay. So again, I'm Mark Cathy with McGill Associates. I've been doing this solid waste thing since about 1991 when I was co-oping with Clemson University. So been working in solid waste for quite some time. Appreciate the invitation. Appreciate the Board of Advisors having me here tonight. One thing as I go through this, please, if you have any questions, just ask. I want everyone to have their questions answered. Obviously, we'll have some questions at the end as well, but anything that comes to mind while you're going through it, please interrupt me, and I want this to be fruitful. I want to get your questions answered, okay? All right, so again, as Johnny said, we're looking at the solid waste disposal options for Appomattox County. I will try to be brief. I know you have a long agenda potentially tonight. I'll be as brief as I can be, but you ask all the questions you want. How about that? Introduction, of course, some assumptions on the basis of our evaluation, and then evaluation of the options and talk about each of those, 7 total, and then summary and recommendation, okay? So again, project purpose is to determine what, our recommendations are relative to the current situation of solid waste management in Appomattox County, and to evaluate these options and to give you our opinion as to what these numbers are coming up to tell. What are the options for Appomattox County? Should you pursue based on obviously the Region 2000 landfill is running out of space, estimated 2029. Some assumptions, the basis of our evaluation, 20-year planning period. Waste acceptance is in several categories. You'll see that we have a couple of 2A, 2B, I think 5A, 5B options. You'll either be residential, currently is what you're doing, residential only, residential and commercial, assuming that if some of these facilities were built, that you would accept more commercial waste within the county, or commercial, residential, commercial, and a portion of the out-of-county if you build a facility that makes it more advantageous for some local counties to or adjacent counties to bring waste to you or other haulers. Okay. Assumptions also, salaries and benefits, the current $557,800 for fiscal year 2025, a 4% year-over-year increase. Waste hauling, a 2% year-over-year increase while hauling to Region 2000, and a 3% increase after 2029. Waste disposal, 4% year-over-year increase. Operations and maintenance, 2.5% year-over-year. And capital outlay, convenience center improvements, in addition to 3.5% year-over-year increase for equipment cost. So each of these scenarios includes improvements to the convenience centers that are recommended that need to be completed at a tune of about $125,000 per center, 2 each year, and then the fourth year would be just 1 center. Okay. Evaluation of options, what projects that entails, and the efforts required for each project. So here's what options that were considered, and we worked with John and Johnny to develop these options. A direct haul to the next available MSW landfill. 2 and 2B, there's 2 options here. County-owned transfer station. Option 3, partnership with a new private transfer station. Option 4, open existing MSW landfill. The previously permitted cells J and K. We understand from Virginia DEQ those would have to be resubmitted, but they were previously approved, so they should reasonably be approved in the future. Option 5 would be develop a new MSW landfill across Morningstar Road at the property owned by the county currently. Develop a private landfill or develop a new waste-to-energy facility. Any questions on those? Okay. Okay, option 1, direct haul to the next available MSW landfill. So the parameters utilized here. Private hauling for convenience centers to the new landfill. Maplewood landfill in Amelia used for cost projections only. That doesn't, that's the reason is proximity. They have the lowest tipping fee, as well as they are willing to accept it, and that's within Appomattox is within their permitted service area. Okay. Option 1. So this is what was done for each one. And I want to spend just a minute on this first one so you'll understand what we're looking at here. This is color coded, and I had my best spreadsheet nerd doing this for me. Okay. So this is a lot of meticulous information in this spreadsheet, but I want everybody to understand it. You can see the color coded there. I might have to look on this option to figure out what the colors are. I can't see the TV. I can see some of them. Okay, so you have that green color you can see at the bottom. First of all, let me back up. You see the revenue is below the line. Okay, so that takes off the total cost. Then you see salaries and benefits in green. You see waste hauling in red. You see the waste disposal fees in that brownish color. And then you see operation and maintenance, capital outlay. And you see all, in those first several years, you see all the capital outlay in the yellow at the top. That is for the convenience center upgrades for this particular option. And then you have revenue for recycling, which comes off the bottom, okay? So this is what we did for each option. And let me direct you to the top right corner here in each option. So the expensive cumulative for this option is $40 million over a 20-year period. And the total waste managed is 132,460 tons. And that's, of course, growth of your current waste stream. And the average cost per ton of 303. Now, let me point out, that average cost per ton can be quite variable, okay? So most of our decisions and rankings were based off of the total cost, okay? Because that's the total cost to manage your waste over 20 years, okay? So that's basically option one. Let me go to option two here. Option two is building the county building its own transfer station, okay? So develop a transfer station of estimated 6,800 square feet. That would require new scales and scale house. Also new equipment and additional employees for operations, and capturing the residential and commercial waste, approximately 17,000 tons per year, okay? Obviously, the transfer station in this situation will be operated by the county, and of course, the idea is the transfer station saves on transportation from all the individual convenience centers. Okay, what we found in our analysis, as you can see, the same color coding as the last time, and you can see that from this one that the total estimated for FY25 through FY45 is $57 million, and it's due to the extensive capital to build the transfer station as well as replace equipment as you go along. Because you see that capital, that's what's in here. There's capital all the way across each year for various items, which is different than the direct haul from the convenience centers. So again, total $57 million. Total waste managed is the residential 132,460, average cost per ton $431. Okay. Option 2B. Option 2B would be 2A is the current waste stream residential only. 2B is if you added all of the commercial waste and assumed it would go to your transfer station, okay? So in doing that, the total cost will be approximately $60 million, and the total waste managed, though, would be significantly more at 320,000 tons, and an average cost per ton at 187. But you can see there's additional revenue which comes off of the bottom, but it's honestly not enough revenue to make a large difference. Okay. Option three. Option three is partnership with a new private transfer station. So again, the parameters involved here: current operational cost, the host agreement with a private company that would provide some revenue to the county, hauling contract for station, near the county center, centroid somewhere, tip fee for disposal at new landfill. So the advantage of this one that you'll see is that obviously there's no significant capital outlay for the county. And so that's the big difference here. Looking at the financials here estimated on option three. Option three has a total estimated spend for the county for the 20-year planning period of $31.5 million. And again, the total tons managed here assumed to be residential, and that would come at a cost of $238 a ton. Okay, option four. So, building a landfill, opening the existing MSW landfill, the previously permitted cells J and K. Those aren't large cells, but that could be done. Reactivating those cells, approximately 1.3 million cubic yards of airspace. Again, new scale and scale house, new equipment, additional employees, and leachate management and closure costs would all come into play here. Obviously, there's a much higher engagement for the county in this. You have to build this landfill, permit and build this landfill, and you would have expanded operations from what you currently see. Option four, the financials on option four. So we're estimating that would be over a 20-year period, $69 million. Again, assuming the residential waste projected with the growth at 132,460, at an average cost per ton of $521. Option 4B, same as the transfer station, except we would assume the residential and the commercial waste would be operated. And that comes, of course, with additional revenue at the landfill from tipping fee. So therefore, you can see the revenue at 4B. Right here's that model. And so you can see the revenue coming off the total cost at the bottom. So that one actually is somewhat cheaper at $67 million, but not much. At total waste managed, again, 320,000 tons at an average cost per ton of $212. Okay, option 5, develop a new MSW landfill across the road with the county-owned property. This would be county developed. And of course, this would give you a larger footprint of roughly 41 acres based on the available property. And that's a desktop exercise. We have not obviously done any investigation on the property other than look at topo and look at natural resources that are evident. But it appears that you could build approximately a 41-acre cell. Approximately 2.7 million cubic yards. Same thing, you would have to have new scale house. You would have a new equipment, additional employees, and you would have leachate management. So the financials on option 5, total of, for the current waste, it would be estimated at $69 million, and again, same 132,000 tons managed at a cost of $525 per ton. And option 5B is adding the commercial waste in as well. And that is estimated to be at roughly $63 million, 62.9, and 320,000 tons managed and an average cost of $196. Okay. Then looking at a private landfill. So you would sell the property to a private developer. Obviously, you'd have to negotiate this, but these are the assumptions. You would, of course, receive some type of host agreement. And, of course, the county would not have near the involvement in permitting this facility. Understand, I'm just here to give you options. I understand there's not in my backyard scenarios, and I'm not here to talk about that. That's something you have to talk about locally. I'm just telling you about the finances of this option, okay? So in this option, looking at option 6 as a private landfill, we estimated as far as county, not the private developer, of course, but the county out of pocket for 20 years is $27.6 million, of managing 132,000 tons and $209 per ton. And then option 7 is developing a new waste-to-energy facility. So this is permitting a new waste-to-energy facility. We have assumed that would take much longer than permitting a landfill, just due to the air quality requirements and things. So we've assumed that would probably, if we started tomorrow, or if someone started tomorrow, I've never permitted a waste-to-energy facility. But if you started that tomorrow, we expect that would probably take realistically 10 years to do. Also, construction of a new waste-to-energy facility, the scales and scale house, same things required. And then the new equipment and expanded employees. You still have to dispose of residual waste in a landfill, the ash, of course, the residuals. And you have the ongoing operational permitting costs and associated with environmental controls. So definitely a higher regulatory responsibility with the waste to energy and an extensive permitting effort. So our estimated, and this is based largely on most of the waste to energy facilities that are still operating are close to, 900,000 tons, excessive tonnage. The economy of scale in order to build a waste to energy facility is usually, very high tonnage that you're operating on. Obviously, you can imagine the low tonnage would create, potentially a large cost as far as efficiencies go. So you can see the capital outlay here for the waste-to-energy facility starting later than the other development of the other ones, and the capital at the top is pretty extensive. Coming at a price tag of $102 million. As far as total tons managed here, what we assumed was the county waste being residential and commercial, as well as potentially 50% of the Region 2000 waste now, which I don't even know that that's possible. So, but if we built this facility, you would obviously have to go out and do market research and figure out how much of that waste that you could bring to this facility. But this is our estimated cost of the $102 million. Again, 630,000 tons managed, which does take that average cost per ton down, but that means you have to go out and secure that waste somehow as well. Okay? Sure.
In that, is this reflecting any of the income recouped from selling energy?
No, the revenue involved here is basically from the waste collected, is tipping fees, yeah.
So the average cost per ton of $160 could be wrong because it's gonna be cash inflow from selling energy.
That's possible, but you also have to go collect, you also have to get a market for all this waste to energy. You have to go capture that market in order to bring it to a facility, of course, in Appomattox County. I mean, Appomattox County only manages 5,700 tons right now on an annual basis. So it's just, it seems out of proportion by 100x to even consider a waste-to-energy facility. The waste-to-energy facilities that are in Virginia, some that were highly touted as great facilities at their time, they've now closed. They've closed, I think, because of the significant environmental constraints on them and the cost to always improve that equipment. Covanta Fairfax is still operating, of course, and it's a huge facility. It probably serves a million people plus. So again, it's all the research that we have done is waste-to-energy facilities require a lot of tonnage to even become close to competitive with other options. The reality is that, the United States is as dense as it seems in lots of places. We still have a lot of property for landfills versus, other more densely populated places in the world. So it's just usually the landfill wins out as far as the cost comparison goes. Even here, the landfill, albeit private development, in order to gain more tonnage, private development, defer that development cost from the county. That's still one of the best total cost options here for the county. So we'll go back to all the questions we want to here in a minute. The summary and the recommendations. Basically, we ranked each of these. We ranked most of these by total cost because there's so much. The county does not control the waste stream. You have to manage your 5,700 tons, but you do not control what happens with the rest of that waste. So therefore, that being considered, we looked at total cost as our number one determiner as to how these land. And that would be a private landfill. That would, of course, you'd have to go out and find a willing partner to purchase the property and develop the landfill, and that would have to be something politically that Appomattox County is willing to do. I can't answer that question looking at the finances. Private transfer station, that was the next least costly option. And again, I know there's previously an agreement in place. host agreement in place, and that was recommending, that was estimated at 400 tons per day is what that company thought that they could bring into Appomattox County. And then, of course, our third option would be recommended from a total cost standpoint would be hauling direct, basically what you're doing now. Where then we vastly separate real quickly into, a transfer station running from 57 million and waste to energy running to 102 million. The other data point on the waste to energy is, I think it was R.W. Beck in 2005 studied it, and they were looking at 900 tons a day, and I believe their number was 117 million to build it then. So, looking at something, it's hard to scale waste to energy. There's so many things required, so that's another concern of ours. And that R.W. Beck is another data point on that previous study that was completed. So our recommendation, as you can see here, would be to see what willing partners you have to potentially develop a private landfill if that is politically feasible in Appomattox County. Same thing with the private transfer station. I've looked at some privatization of landfills in the past, and those waste companies are good at what they do. It's nothing against a lot of the counties. I've worked with, dozens of counties as well, but those private waste companies know where to find the waste, and they know how to be efficient at it. So it's no surprise that the private landfill development option or the transfer station could be, good financial options for Appomattox County. But there's also some intangibles. You have to control, you're paying someone else at that point. You have a long-term agreement, so you need to make sure that you have certain things in place, like the host agreement. But you have somewhat privatized it, and so then the question is do you control your own destiny? Well, I've seen, you can build a landfill. Again, a landfill, I think if we build a landfill, the lowest cost option would be to go across Morningstar Road and build a new landfill, and that's $62 million is estimated total cost over 20 years. But you would have control of your own waste stream and disposal of your waste stream at that option. But you're also doubling your capital. I'll have to look. I think it depends. It depends on whether you have residential only, residential and commercial, or whether you were able to and wanted to capture any additional waste. But I had so here on a footnote, I'll have to look that up, but I'll find it in a second. It was, I just can't remember the specific years. It depends on which waste stream it was. 41.3 acres. Okay, so developing cells J and K at Morningstar Road facility and buildings L would be 1.1 for and assuming 16,000 tons per year with the commercial waste for the financial model of projected cell J and K. $16 years of life projected. April of 2052. 27 years, roughly. If you built J, K, and the facility across the road, you would have closer to 50 years.
It's gotta be 120 million cost. If you did them both, each one of them 60.
Right, but again, you're going to control your destiny there. As far as you, but you're right. That's why we probably just go across the road and do L, just because the geometry and the size of that landfill gives you extensive more volume of waste disposal, much more airspace, just based on the geometry of it.
I have one question.
Sure.
Other than all direct, all of these scenarios is based upon within the county. Is that right?
Within the county,
Being built or whatever.
yes. That's the typical assumption, yes, within the county.
Certainly given us a lot to read and digest in this other report that we have here.
Let me tell you, it is a mouthful. We've dug at this a lot, and there's a lot of, it's like solving an equation with, 6, 10, 12 variables. It's a lot of things to look at. That's why we stated those assumptions up front as far as growth and the assumptions of how much waste. The reality is you just don't know until you go out there and determine who's going to send waste your way. So it's almost like you need to narrow down to the options to determine if anyone's willing to send waste your way. And then, of course, we always know that with any landfill, you've got the whole, NIMBY situation to deal with. But then at the same time, everyone has to dispose of waste. We all produce waste. So.
Any other questions from the board?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, I got one.
All right, Ms. Carter.
Another one, I should say. As you know and aware, we have a designated right now, as we talk, a transfer station location.
Mhm.
And I don't know if you know all the shenanigans, I say it like that we've been through.
Let's say it, I've heard rumor of them.
Okay. It has been, I forgot how many years that all of this originated. And we are hardly any closer today than we were then. So then we gotta take into effect, or into account, any of these other than all direct, as far as permitting and all the necessary environmental regulations. So it sounds like a best estimate would probably be 10 years.
Well, it certainly, the design and the permitting of those should not be 10 years unless there's political hoops that I can't control or any engineering consultant can't control. The physical permitting of a transfer station or landfill should not take that long. Now, we've assumed in each one of these that you would continue to haul to the Region 2000 landfill until 2029. But yeah, I think everyone's aware, and I understand, I think, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what you're getting at is it's 2025. 2029, we all know, is not that far off. So, yes, a decision as to how to, what to pursue would probably be a good idea in the near future.
Okay, Mr. Wiltshire.
So if we open another cell.
Mhm.
If that, and I'm not saying it is, but if opening another cell on already county-owned property, let's just pretend that's the most sane thing to do since you have a 4-year clock.
Mhm.
Mr. Wiltshire, would you turn your mic on?
Oh, I'm sorry. Let's just assume opening another cell on already county-owned property. is, let's just assume that's the wisest thing to do since we're looking at a 4-year clock. Is it a requirement? Why do you keep suggesting about bringing in extra trash?
No, you don't have to, but
Personally, I don't think we should unless there's something I'm ignorant of. We should make our landfill last as long as it can.
no, it's a catch-22 with the landfill. It always has been. And the reason is because the way you pay for a landfill is you build a landfill, obviously, and it's very expensive now. You know,
Apparently.
well, when I got in, I mean, it really is. I mean, when I got in this business, we would, say, okay, what is it, 250,000 an acre? It's not 250 an acre anymore. It's very expensive to build a landfill now. And since COVID, I think anyone that's involved in any fashion of the construction industry, it's been crazy what's happened as far as what's happened since, 2020 in construction costs. And you can, I still think it's crazy, but it is what it is because we have real costs to compare to.
So the motivation to bring in outside trash is to pay for the landfill. But then you also hold the gun to your own head because your landfill gets fuller.
Of course.
Sooner.
So it's the classic business calc equation, how much money do you bring in, and you just have to look and see at what's the tipping point of bringing in additional waste to help you pay for it versus maintaining the longevity of the landfill.
And
for
here in
your
our
own
county, every decade, we're gonna be looking at the same thing,
Correct.
which is why, and I know I'm the only crazy one on the board, I like the trash to energy thing. Because if you can get around the hurdle of building one, you're set. You're not gonna run out of a landfill. And there is an income stream that can be generated off it.
That's,
But I
if
know,
I understand him right, if you can get enough trash to operate it. So, and we don't have that. Well, if there's no other questions, I'd like to conclude this portion so we can move on.
I certainly, that's fine. Certainly want to help the county in any way I can, and I don't want any of this information to be ambiguous. So if anybody has any questions following this, if you'll let John and Johnny know, certainly.
Mr. Chairman. With the with the cells that we own, in your analysis, was any of the potential cost involved in getting them to be re-permitted?
Yes, there's-
That's calculated in?
It
What
is.
you think an estimate? What was that figure?
I do not know.
It's
I'd have
just
to go back.
within the,
It's just, we included a percentage. It would have been a generic percentage of construction cost to permit it. And it has been permitted, it has been drawn before, so it should be somewhat less. But that's an insignificant cost compared to just the construction of the landfill footprint itself. And of course, the additional equipment that has to be purchased, scale house, a dozer, a compactor, a front-end loader, motor grader, a water truck, all of that stuff adds up real quick.
Can I ask one question? May I ask a question?
Yes, Ms. Adams.
Okay. So in looking at this report, you talked about the assumptions. And the assumptions probably are going to be there regardless of what option we choose. So what is the margin between the assumptions and the new additional cost? And how much of that is convenience center upgrade you talked about in those assumptions?
The convenience center upgrades was assumed at $125,000. John and Johnny and we came up with that roughly. That's some asphalt paving. That's another compactor, and it's a couple concrete pads. That's kind of what was assumed at each facility. And of course, that was escalated in cost as well, starting at 125, doing two, so 250 the first year, 250, and then 125, whatever that increase is. That's what was assumed there. As far as the other assumptions, again, we don't know what inflation is, nor does anyone. So all we did is we looked at, CPI and other, as far as to try to determine what we thought a reasonable assumption was for the various, whether it's salaries or whether it's hauling cost. all those things, we made an assumption. We could certainly be off by, half an order of magnitude or an order of magnitude, depending on what happens with the economy. I mean, obviously, if things have been a little bit, if anybody has anything in the stock market, everybody's been watching it for the past, few weeks. So who knows what's going to happen with that? We just made reasonable assumptions of what we have done in the past, looking at solid waste master plans for other counties. And so we feel pretty good about those costs. Certainly, they can change. We're estimating.
I was just thinking that's a rather large number on all of these. Maybe if we knew that percentage, it would look a little more favorable in decision-making.
Well, again, I know that's a lot of information to download at one time. Yeah. I mean, certainly. I mean, obviously, I've looked at it numerous times, and, you still come up with, every time you look at it, is another way to potentially look at it. So all those spreadsheets that you see, I mean, each one of those is built, and it was, when you start taking numbers like that and you start putting percentages on those, yes, we assume 4% on some, but if you look over the past 3 or 4 years, I believe some would argue that might not be enough. But if it was 1 or 2%, that makes a big difference, to your point. But again, we didn't want to give you a scenario that would paint a prettier picture than it is as far as overall cost goes. So we wanted you to have real numbers, or what we thought could be real numbers. But again, if you look at those spreadsheets and you have questions about them, I'd certainly be willing to answer your questions, okay?
Well, for myself, I want to have time to fully read your comparison study here and dig more deeply into what you did and read some of your assumptions and that you have in here before I'm prepared to ask questions. So
I completely understand. That's completely fair.
I'm sure you'll be available at the time we do want to ask more questions. Or
Certainly.
anything else from the board? All right, Ms. Kathy, thank you for your time, and I'm sure we'll be talking to you again.
All right, thanks for having me.
All right, next up, Sheriff Robbie Richardson is requested to appear before the board to provide an update on his department.
Good evening, Chairman, board members. Thank y'all. I just come to give my quarterly stats on our summons and warrants that have been served. Since the beginning of the year through March up to date, we've had 251 summons issued, 63 misdemeanor arrests, and 37 felony arrests. The one thing I'm going to start doing from here on is kind of breaking out these felony arrests, so it kind of gives you more of an insight of what we're doing, from drug arrests to crimes against persons and crimes against property. That way it gives a little bit more insight of what's going on in the county with these warrants. Any questions? 37.
Any questions from the board?
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Sheriff. All right. Next, we have Mrs. Patricia Morton, Registrar, is requested to appear before the board to discuss voting precincts.
Good evening. Thank you for having us again. You'll be happy to know I only have 3 options to show you, not 7. Let's see. All right, what do I do, Ace? Oh, of course, thank you. All right. I wanted to do a quick review for those just tuning in that missed the last 2 months we've been speaking with you. The reasons for considering going from 9 to 7 precincts is cost savings. And you may be surprised to hear that one of the reporters a couple of weeks ago actually asked me, why do you need to save money? It seems pretty obvious to me that you're always trying to keep our taxes low. But I got to thinking about a more complete answer. And I realized that the law changes in the time I've been here, which is not quite 5 years. We have the 45 days of early voting for anybody. We have the absentee permanent list, so I will send anybody in the county a ballot who's a registered voter and wants one. We have reporting by precinct, which adds to our costs. And then this year, basically, we have a June primary every year. And that last one alone is going to add $9,000 to $10,000 to our annual costs on average for an election, which is why you saw an increase in our budget request for the electoral board. So by trying to save $5,000 to $6,000 a year, we are mitigating that as much as we can figure out how to do a little bit. It's not perfect, but it makes sense to try to keep it as low as possible when we have all these law changes that are causing each locality to have to pay more to begin with. So to recap, why we wanted to consolidate AG into Oakville. AG is the last of our buildings without any running water, with no indoor plumbing. The heating is poor. It was 47 degrees in there in January, and that's a rough thing to start out a 15-hour day for somebody. We have not succeeded in finding an alternative at all. We've been looking for years, actually, to try to replace the AG precinct without even considering consolidation for the last couple of years. And there just are so few public buildings and so many churches these days that unfortunately don't want to get involved with elections that we have not succeeded. So merging it into Oakville still looks like the best option that we could see. The increase in voting, as I said, the 45 days of early voting has led to lower election day turnout. And I think I had a somewhat misleading set of numbers on my last slide, my last presentation in January that Lannis gave. We had, it sometimes gets confusing between the percentage of the voters who voted and the percentage of the residents who could have voted who actually came on election day. So I wanted to try to make that a little clearer in tonight's presentation. So this average number of people who are registered who actually show up is 9% for primaries, as Rob on our electoral board would call it, a pathetically low number, sadly. And it's 38% of our voters who show up on election day on average, and this is county-wide numbers. So when we're talking about people coming to the precincts, we're talking about, on average, even in a November election, less than half of our voters are showing up at the precincts. I just want to make that clear. And ask questions whenever, if you have any. So we're still looking to possibly merge some precincts. There will be no changes made before June at this point because we are out of time. And as Mr. Popovich has advised me, don't try to rush this. It takes time to do this. So we're still considering both districts. We still think AG merging with Oakville is the best thing to do there. The parking, as Ms. Adams, who's in the back here, the other Ms. Adams, said at the last meeting, the parking is limited. I think it needs some expansion. The gravel that's there at Oakville is much better than it was. So we may have, I don't think we'll have any trouble for June elections, may or may not have trouble in November. But I'm also, we've got to talk about what else could we do? If we send somebody out there with a yellow vest and a flashlight, can they park them a little tighter? I don't know. We try to think through whatever we can do to make it work, but we may need to look at expanding that parking at Oakville. So be aware of that. We had feedback, as you know, at the last meeting, and based on that, we came up with an additional option for Falling River, and that's what I want to present primarily tonight. So option one is continue as presented in January, where we would merge AG into the Oakville precinct, we would merge CHAP into Spout Spring. Option two is make no changes at this time, delay everything and rethink it. Option three is merge AG into Oakville and create a new Falling River district for all the voters in Falling River district and place that at Friendship Baptist Church. Now, Friendship Baptist Church, you might say, well, why them? Based on the feedback we got, we went back and looked at what's in Falling River. We reviewed 4 churches, and we talked to the pastors at 2 of them. We went and saw that basically the outside, looking at the ADA entrances to the facilities, looking at the parking, looking what kind of roads they were on, looking at the traffic patterns in that area. And we concluded that Friendship Baptist, which is on 727, was more centrally located than either Chap or Spout Spring current polling locations. It best met our ADA needs and the overall parking and facility quality. It's closer to the center of the district's population, which is kind of centered around town, a little bit south of town, and a little bit southwest. It's on a fairly major road, not as major as 460, of course, but it is a much safer entrance for traveling into and out of the precinct than what we have right now at Spout Spring. And the more we looked at this, the more concerned we were, and I talked with Sheriff Richardson about it today. There are a lot of accidents at that intersection with that tunnel at Spout Spring where the Ruritan Club is. And so this option, the more we looked at it, is, you know, it's viable in terms of getting in and out. You're turning off of 727 onto a street, onto, I forgot the name of your street. Thank you, ma'am. Woodlawn Trail, and then turn into the church. So you've kind of got two turns to slow people down, if you will. We think it's a win-win. We're not trying to say go do this, but we thought we are presenting a good option to you. And we think it meets the needs of the group, of the district, and it will also help to cut expenses. So where exactly are we talking about? You can kind of see on my little hand-drawn outline here of the district. Friendship Baptist is actually on the upper right there where it looked like somebody's thumb sticking up. And that it is outside the district, but it is within a mile of the district, which means we don't need any special permission to use that for a polling location. As you can see, northwest to southeast, it's much more central than where Spout Spring is, which shows up on the upper left there, just inside the district. It's much more central than the Chap location, which is pretty far out there and rather small as well, so. Okay, so what are some of the pros and cons? The pros, of course, are the cost savings in the annual expenses, the buildings, the AG building. In particular, that property could be sold. And capital equipment, as we talked about before, when we are hearing rumors that we're going to have to replace our voting equipment because of security changes. So we were, as our capital equipment plan said, we were expecting to have to change it next year or in '27. It may be forced upon us next year. We don't know yet. So we may not have a lot of choice over that. An improved facility, in particular in AG, is a big goal of ours. It will help us retain our officers of election. It's a tough enough job working a long day, and if you're freezing, it's even tougher. So, both of the proposals have the locations on fairly major routes, and so we're not worried about that. Some of the cons, in any of the scenarios, both option 1, option 3, the voters need to travel further. But what we were looking at with option 3 was to try to reduce the distance change, particularly for those Chap voters. And so it does, in fact, do that. As we saw in January, the highest additional travel was 12 miles for the Hinkles and others. And if we went from Chap to Spout Spring, and now the highest addition is about 6 miles. So both at AG and at Chap and Spout Spring. Spout Spring's a little bit further. Spout Springs, it would add 8 miles for some voters, but it would shorten the distance for some voters as well. So anyway, you're looking at 6 to 8 miles difference for maximum for voters. One of the other cons is that we will have to notify all of the Falling River voters, and of course, we are going to have a lot of Falling River voters who are not going to want to change, right? Just like we have Chap voters who don't want to move locations. This adds some expense, may or may not add some feedback to you folks. That remains to be seen. The one-time expense it adds is for us to mail out new voter cards to the almost 2,000 voters that are in the Spout Spring polling location now in that precinct. And so that's about $1,700 one time added. And that expense would be incurred in the beginning of fiscal '26. So if if you like this third option, then have been discussing with my board and Mr. Popovich about doing the public hearing for the new ordinance in April. And the reason for that is if they are going to hear a lot of feedback from voters saying, oh, no, we don't want to move over to this other church, then I'd rather hear it sooner rather than later. Mr. Popovich has advised us to go the route of getting approval from the Attorney General's office, and that can be done in parallel with holding the public hearing that's required for the ordinance change. In either case, however we go, whichever option you choose, if we're going to change things, we need to be done and have it all finalized by early September in order to make it take effect for the November election. We have a 60-day window ahead of a general election there that we have to work with. So, and the only thing that's wrong with this slide is that public comment period goes away if we go the Attorney General route. You still have the public hearing, but it's a little bit different process than what we were starting in January. So I just want to make sure you knew that. To Susan's point to me the other day that I have everything right with Mark on my slide, that was one thing I missed, sorry. So you can cross out line 2 on that slide there. All right, and then so notifying voters, as I said, we said before, we've got to have a public hearing for the ordinance change, and we've got to notify all voters who are going to be affected. So that means the AG voters, the CHAP voters, and the Spout Spring voters, if you choose option 3. That's all I had, and so I'd be happy to take questions.
All right, any questions from the board? Mr. Carter?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What role would the Attorney General play in this?
So Mark can probably answer that better than I can. Do you want to take that?
Yeah, under the Virginia Voters' Rights Act, the Attorney General's role would be to act like what the Department of Justice used to be under the Civil Rights Act for pre-clearance purposes. In other words, the Attorney General's office looks at the proposed change and determines whether or not it discriminates against any group or organization, and advises us as to his or her determination as to whether or not there's discriminatory treatment as a result of the proposed change.
And I could add to that we have had some visitors from the NAACP, as you may have heard here last month, and also at our last recent electoral board meeting. And we went through these options with them, and my take on it was that they seemed like we were doing our best and that we are not trying to cause any trouble or disenfranchise any voters, that they understood the situation that we're in.
Good answer. Any other questions?
Okay.
All righty, thank you, Ms. Morton. Great
I-
presentation.
Thank you. Are you,
Well, I was gonna say, if there's no other questions, then the chair would be open to a motion on an option, and if option 3 is approved, an option 4, or the request for a public hearing on the 21st of April.
Mr. Chairman, I'll just
Mr. Hips.
state that they're not my districts, and so I'll support whatever supervisors particular to those areas, if they want to change anything. But it's not my decision to make.
I'll make a motion to go ahead and consider the third option and plan for the public hearing in April.
And also direct the attorney to.
And direct the attorney to write to the AG.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Mr. Wolfskills made the motion to select option 3, including setting of a public hearing on the 21st of April, and letter be sent to the Attorney General by the county attorney. Is there a second? guess I'll second the motion. Discussion. And I want to remind everybody that this isn't necessarily approval because the ordinance still has to be approved. And if the ordinance never approved, then it won't happen. But this is at least keep information flowing and comments flowing. All right, motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All righty, Mr. Carter.
Aye.
Mr. Hips. Mr. Webskill. And I vote aye also. So we've set in motion a public hearing on the changed ordinance on 21st of April. Attorney will be sending a letter to the AG.
Very good. I'm sorry?
Yes, and thank the electoral board for all their hard work.
Thank you. I think you've made a wise choice. That's just my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up, we have Ms. Sarah Maddox, CEO of Piedmont Area Veterans Council, is asked to appear before the board.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, County Attorney, and Ms. Adams, and two young ladies over here. Thank you. Piedmont Area Veterans Council, as you know, last year we purchased our building. Our numbers have increased dramatically since we have a permanent home. And I think because of the economy is another huge factor for us, for the numbers of people that we see. We are getting more requests from homeless veterans, which I think we've only had one from Appomattox County. But we usually get 3 to 10 a week. Homeless veterans take approximately probably 3 hours of staff time for just one person. We've had 2 today, and then one that was incarcerated that was coming out, which takes another 3 to 5 hours normally to coordinate benefits for them. We still do the benefits and the resources, which is one of our highest requests. And right now, we're booked out until April. And that's with 6 of us, and 6 of us in the office working. We're pretty busy. We started the grant program last year. We did $555,000, which I do all the grants. I did $555,000 last year in 6 months. $175,000 was done for Appomattox County for your residents. So which I think was a pretty good return. We still have the same programs as far as the Virginia Employment Commission coming in, offering transitional services, employment services. We have the Vet Center, which is probably one of our biggest draws too. Veterans don't have to go to Richmond or to Salem. They can actually come to the office and do individual group counseling, and we have OIF, OEF counseling, as well as Vietnam veteran counseling in the office. We are pretty much a volunteer staff. I have 6 volunteers that work with me every day. Some of them are supposed to work 15 hours. They end up working 40 to 50 hours. They're still there at night when I'm still leaving. They're still working. And I think for a volunteer organization, for the majority of us being volunteers, we do a really good job of servicing the 8 counties that we cover. Our added expense, of course, was the building. So we appreciate the funding that you guys have given us in the past. And without that, we probably wouldn't be able to keep our doors open, because just trying to meet the needs of the services request versus volunteers and fundraising. We do try to raise as much as we can fundraising. Typically, at least half of our funding amount is raised by fundraising. We've increased our board last year from 9 members to 13. And with having that extra staff or those extra board members, it's helped us really be more concise as to what programs we have. And we pretty much have had to this year. We can't handle anything outside of our coverage area. We try to meet the needs of everybody that called. We can refer them, but we can't service anybody other than what's in our 8 county coverage area right now. Any questions?
Mr.
Mr.
Chairman,
Carter?
the homeless person you were speaking of, excuse me, was he or she offered an alternative?
Yes, they were. And that's another option. I mean, that's another issue that we run into. When they are offered options, you know, we can refer them to the VA homeless program, which is the VASH program, where they get a voucher. We refer them to SSVF, which is supportive housing. So they could go in supportive housing first and then they could go in VASH. But we can't force them to go. And if they don't want to move, if they don't want to move out of this coverage area, then we really can't force them to move to another location to help them. We can try to increase their benefits to get more, more money in their pocket as far as benefits. But sometimes they want to stay where they're at. And sometimes they don't really want to change their situation, even though they're homeless. They've been used to living that way.
But what I was concerned about, if you was already at maximum space and a veteran came in and you'd already give some time, space to the homeless, then that kind of defeats the purpose, I think.
We take homeless in our eight county coverage area. I mean, like today, we had calls from DC, we had calls from Richmond, we had calls from North Carolina. We just can't handle that volume anymore. If they're homeless, we can only connect them to other resources in their area.
If I may, Mr. Carter, Piedmont doesn't have a facility to house veterans.
No, we don't, no.
They work to place that homeless veteran in some facility. They don't,
Okay.
So typically what happens, the veteran comes in and we have them either in a hotel for a week or 2 weeks by connecting them to a nonprofit while they're getting connected with SSVF and VASH. The problem with our area, or some of our area, but the coverage area, is that there is no supportive housing available for that veteran to go to. We don't have that housing in some of the counties. In fact, I think most of our counties, we don't have that housing. Because I think STEPS was looking at building supportive housing across the road from us to address that issue.
Yeah, thank you for clarification there.
Well, and I don't know if you understand, like when a veteran goes on a VASH voucher, so the veteran, I'll give you an example. Last week we had a veteran, the veteran's on the voucher, the spouse may on the voucher, may be on the voucher with them, their adult daughter may be on the voucher, her 3 children may be on the voucher, the 2 dogs and the 3 cats all go on one voucher. So if the rent is $2,400, they may end up only paying $80 a month, and they're on that voucher for life. And we as taxpayers pay that. Most people don't understand SSVF and the VASH vouchers. They're pretty unique when you start delving into them.
well, I know that I have received a lot of comments about what Piedmont does, and specifically you, from the veterans that I see every day, so. And I remember when Mr. Abbott was on the board, he would praise you. In fact, that's how I got hooked up with you, because Mr. Abbott said, hey, you need to go talk to Sarah, so. We appreciate what you do for Appomattox County and the other vets.
Appomattox County has turned into our 3rd busiest county, which is kind of, it's one of our smaller counties compared to the others, but it's our 3rd busiest county. And I think, with a lot of the PACT Act changes, a lot of widows that typically have been denied can now come in and we can reopen their claims and we can get the benefits for them. And we see, and I think I told you before the meeting, we see a lot of elderly veterans who can't pay their bills now. So we're looking at national nonprofits as much as we can to get their HVAC units fixed, a roof on their house. I mean, it's sad. It's really sad with the economy the way it is. And then, if we have widows that come in and they're used to having 100% with their husband, 100% service connected and caregiver pay, that may be $9,000 or $10,000. Well, after the veteran expires, it goes down to $1,600. And then we have widows calling in, they can't pay their mortgage. So I'm working with the VA to keep our house out of foreclosure. I mean, and every day we're filled every day with multitudes of different requests. And I cannot thank you enough for supporting us. I think it's, I'm a veteran and I know some of you are, but it's one of the greatest honors I think that we can. One of our mottos is we change a life, one life every day when they walk through the door. And that's what we do. And I'm proud to say that I think we do a really good job of that. And with the volunteer staff, it's pretty amazing what we do.
Yes.
Most of my volunteers are Vietnam veterans who come in every day and work 8 to 10 hours a day, helped us. Any questions?
Any other questions, board? Appreciate what you do, and thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Have a safe trip back to Farmville. All right, next up, Mr. Bruce Jones, Senior Extension Agent for the Virginia Cooperative Extension Office, has requested to appear.
Good evening, Chairman Hinkle, board members, and Ms. Adams. Thank you for giving me the time to come before you to discuss my budget request for the Virginia Cooperative Extension Appomattox County Office. Before I jump into the specifics, I would like to extend my thanks to Ms. Adams and the board for allowing us to use the conference room in the administrative building this past week for 4-H extension agent interviews, and also for the participation on the panel by Mr. Wolfskill. Thank you for your help with that. I do know we had qualified applicants, and we are currently waiting a salary offer from Human Resources at Virginia Tech. So hopefully we will have someone in that position very, very soon. With my budget request, the major item, as always, is the salary and wage line item. And that calculation is given to me directly by our Central District Director, Sonia Ferguson, who works in the Danville office. The value that I used for the 4-H agent position, we kind of just took an estimate guess. I imagine that the offer will come in a little bit lower than that, but I don't have a firm value at this moment. And I am pleased to report to the board that I've been able to maintain the funding matrix where the county is only at the 1/3 funding level on the salary and wage line item. It is a common practice when positions are refilled. Sometimes the local portion is increased. So thankfully, I was able to maintain that at what we've always had it at, and that's the lowest level in the state. So I'm very, very thankful for that. I did put in a request for part-time wages. That would be for a summer intern. The way the internship program works, Virginia Tech will provide approximately half of the salary value for an individual if the locality will match that. I would need the county commitment to be able to move forward with a request to Virginia Cooperative Extension for that portion. And that there's no guarantee that I would be able to get an intern. It just depends on the funding matrix on campus and what is available. I did put in a program supply request for funds to allow me to pay for the rental at the community center for use for my educational programs. And another budget request was professional dues and memberships, and then that would be for membership in the national and state 4-H associations for that individual, as well as the county agriculture agent association memberships. And then lastly, I put in a request for employee education. I have negotiated with my superiors where I can get a drone provided to the office. And we're seeing a lot of use of those devices with agriculture, especially for troubleshooting plant growth problems and helping identify issues that might be going on. My request is just to have some assistance with the training that I would have to go through and the licensing procedures and so forth. So would appreciate your consideration of that. And lastly, my request for the county is a little over $81,000 for the county portion. And with that, the Virginia Cooperative Extension investment in our office is $382,000. So as always, I appreciate the support of the board, and thank you for your time this evening. And I'll be happy to answer any questions if you have them at this time.
Any questions from the board? I will say, I think I was reading an article in the SEC magazine, Southeastern, Electrical, about people seeding, farmers seeding with drones, seeding and fertilizing.
Yes.
It was,
We held a field day last summer and actually had a demonstration at it with a drone actually doing spraying. And it's amazing how the technology is rapidly developing.
okay. Well, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
All right, next up, public hearing on amendment to Appomattox County Code, Chapter 13-3 noise. A duly advertised public hearing has been scheduled to receive public comment on a proposed amendment to the noise ordinance. The proposed amendment clarifies Section 13.3-5 maximum permissible noise levels by deleting the word discernible, which has been found to be ambiguous in court proceedings, and adding parentheses to or now sound level for further clarification. The board supervisor requested by the planning commission to review the noise ordinance back in August of 2024. Staff recommendation, after receiving comment on the ordinance, consider amendment to section 13.3-5, maximum permissible noise level to delete the word discernible and add parentheses to or sound level. Anyone here to speak for or against the ordinance from the public? Seeing none? Discussion from the board? Or an motion to make such a change to the ordinance? Mr. Carter?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, Mr. Carter's made the move to approve a change to the ordinance to delete discernible and replace it with parentheses or sound level. Is there a second? Mr. Wolfskill has second. Further discussion? All right, Mr. Wolfskill. Mr. Carter. Mr. Hips. I vote aye also. So it's been approved to amend section 13.3-5 to the ordinance as written in your packet. Mr. Attorney, am I required to read that whole ordinance now? No, sir, you are not. Okay, good. All right, next up. A resolution declaring the end of a local emergency. Back in February, we had a resolution declaring the resolution of local emergency due to the storm damage from winter ice and that, which occurred on Tuesday, February 11th through February 21st. And now we need to do a resolution declaring the end of that local emergency. Is there a motion to pass the resolution declaring the end? Mr. Attorney, were you going to say something? Nope. Okay. Mr. Wolfkill has made the motion to pass the resolution declaring the end of a local emergency. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Carter, second. Discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Carter? Mr. Hips? Mr. Wolfskill? I vote aye also. So the resolution declaring the end of local emergency on February 11th through the 21st of February has passed. All right, next up is a letter of support, which is in your packet, for ODEC Manufactured Home Weatherization Program. Mr. Lloyd Leinhart, Director of Government and Regulatory Affairs for Southside Electric Cooperative, has requested a letter of support to grant submittal to the Tobacco Regional Tobacco Region Revitalization Commission, the Old Dominion Electric Co-op, of which the SEC is a member, is seeking grant funds to jumpstart a new weatherization program in southern Virginia. ODEC, through this new program, will invest $13 million over a 5-year period throughout its multi-member territory. The program will assist qualified manufactured homeowners fill a critical gap in weatherization and energy savings. Staff recommends a letter of support has been prepared by the staff. If the board concurs, please authorize the county administrator to sign the letter and forward it to Mr. Leinhardt for inclusion in his grant applications. And I just might want to say, on Government Day, I watched had a presentation from SEC on their home energy audits that they do, and it's just amazing, some of the stuff they find that's just that people are allowing their homes to do, and when the silly things that it could be fixed. And if we can get a grant to help assist with that, I'm all for it. So, looking for a motion to approve sending the letter or not approving sending the letter?
Make a motion, Mr. Chairman, to approve.
Okay, Mr. Carter's made the motion that we send a letter, authorize county administrator to sign and send a letter for inclusion in the grant application project. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Hips has seconded. Further discussion? All right, call the question. Mr. Webskill. Aye. Mr. Carter.
Aye.
Mr. Hips. I vote aye also. So, Ms. Adams, you're authorized to sign and send the letter. All right, next up, Commissioner of Revenue refund request. Ms. Sarah Henderson, Commissioner of Revenue, is requesting the following to be paid from 1209-5803 refunds. Number one, refund to Dewey Lee McCormick, $98 for personal property taxes. He lives in Nelson County and was erroneously taxed by Appomattox County. Second, refund Joel M. Robertson, $40.28 for personal property taxes. He qualifies for veterans exemption. Number three, refund Mr. Cooper Mortgage Company, $334.76 for real estate taxes in the name of Joel M. Robertson, tax map number 40, parentheses 47A. He qualifies for veterans exemption. And number four, refund Taliga Monet McCoy and Johnny Lee Sutton Jr., $830.15 for 2023 and 2024 personal property that they were erroneously assessed. Staff recommends considering the above refunds, transfer by consent $1,303.19 from the general fund and appropriate to 1209-5803. New local funds are required. Is there a motion to such? Mr. Wolfskill's made the motion that we transfer the funds. Mr. Carter's nodding his head in agreement. Is a second?
Yes.
All right, motion been made and seconded to transfer by consent $1,303.19 from the general fund and appropriate to 1209-5803 for these revenue refund requests. Mr. Wolfskill. Aye. Mr. Hips. Aye. Mr. Carter.
Aye.
I vote aye also. All right. Next, economic development, Conjana incentive agreement. Please transfer by consent $25,000 from the general fund and appropriate to 8105-6007 special project. This is reimburse the EDA for the annual incentive payment to Conjana LLC. The agreement states the board will vote annually for the distribution of the payment. Staff recommends approval of the EDA's request for reimbursement. This is the 8th year of a 10th year incentive program. New local funds are required. Is there a motion to authorize the payment to the EDA?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Carter's moved to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Hips has seconded. Any discussion? All right, call the question. Mr. Wolfskill. Is that aye? Okay. Mr. Carter?
Aye.
Mr. Hips?
Aye.
I vote aye also. Be authorized to transfer $25,000 from 8105-6007 to the EDA. or from the general fund into 8105-6007. All right, next up, Economic Development Broadband Incentive Grant. Please transfer by consent $84,687.56 from the general fund and appropriate to 8105-6007 special projects for the broadband incentive grant payment agreement dated May 2018. And staff recommends that we do it. New local funds are required. Ms. Adams, educate me on that again.
That's Central Virginia Electric. When they did the broadband expansion, the board committed to the, I thought it was 5-year incentive
Okay.
It's a rolling 5 years once.
from the time of construction.
So it's a little over 5 years, but each year construction rolls off at 5 years.
So it was like phase 1, phase 2.
All righty, thank you. Okay, is there a motion? Or any other further questions? Mr. Hips has made the motion to transfer $84,687.56 from the general fund and appropriate it to 8105-6007 special projects for the broadband grant incentive payment. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Carter seconds. Mr. Wolfskill, how do you vote?
Isn't this discussion time?
Okay, discussion.
Who's getting that money?
It goes to Firefly.
I still didn't get no internet. I ain't giving them a check till I get my internet. Every month is 6 months from now. It's 6 months from now.
I haven't got mine either.
Well, then why are you voting for it?
He hasn't voted yet.
You hook me up, baby, and I'll vote.
See? Charlotte County provided me with fiber just 4 months ago.
I think you've got the infrastructure, it just hadn't been connected yet.
All right. I guess Mr. Whipskill votes no. Mr. Carter?
I'll be on the record, though, that ain't all that happened.
All right. Any other discussion?
You don't want to ask me that, do you?
Yeah. Mr. Carter, how do you vote? Mr. Hips? Mr. Whipskill? I vote aye also. Transfer of $84,687.56 to special account number 8105-6007 is approved. Solid waste study. Please transfer by consent $47,300 from the general fund and appropriate to 4205-3002 professional services for the solid waste study being performed by McGill and Associates. Staff recommends that no new local funds are required. All right. So is there a motion to approve the transfer of the solid waste study funds?
Mr. Chairman, one question.
Sure.
Did they offer a monetary factor of what this may cost?
Yeah.
Well, they did.
That's part of the issue, everyone, if I understand your question, I'm sorry, I'm out of line.
Yeah, it was discussed at a previous board meeting. We authorized Mr. Rourke to engage them.
Right, but no limit or nothing was set, or was it?
Oh, you're talking.
This is a total. cost. This is a total cost. Yeah.
Total.
All righty. Is there a motion to transfer the funds from the general fund to the professional services?
So moved.
Mr. Carter's moved to transfer the funds. Is there a second? Mr. Wolfskill's second. Motions are made to transfer by consent $47,300 from the general fund and appropriate to 4205-3002 professional services. Any further discussion? Your vote, Mr. Wolfskill. Mr. Carter.
Aye.
Mr. Hips. I vote aye also. Oh, we're spending all this money.
I know, that's what I thought too.
All right, next up, item 13, capital projects. Please transfer $580,452.90 from the county CIP fund to general.
That's not tax.
to the general fund and appropriate to, 9104-7016 courthouse renovation. New local funds are required, so. Is there a motion? Mr. Wolfskill's made the motion. Mr. Hips has seconded to transfer $580,452.90 from the county CIP fund to the general fund and appropriate it to 9104-7016 courthouse renovation. Any further discussion? Mr. Wolfskill, how do you vote? Aye. Mr. Carter?
Aye.
Mr. Hips? I vote aye also. All right, next up, item 14, budget work session, which consists of considering a Board of Supervisors special call meeting to be held on March 24th or the 25th or the 26th to discuss FY26 budget and to amend the FY26 budget calendar, because if we approve the March meeting, we won't need to have the April 14th meeting and can move another meeting up. So if we approve the special called meeting on the 24th or 25th or 26th, then we can cancel the budget meeting on April 15th, which is tax day, and we can move the public hearing for the for the budget to our regular Board of Supervisors meeting on Monday, April 21st, and then move the approval for the 26 budget to Wednesday, April 30th. So I guess we're going to need two motions, one to approve the special meeting, and then another one to approval of the changes to the budget calendar. So first up, gentlemen, I guess we need to decide which is best, March 24th, 25th, or 26th.
So that's Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
Take your pick.
It's not Thursday.
I'm fine with the 24th. I'm fine with any of the three, whatever suits the board.
I'm fine with Monday or Tuesday. Wednesday's out.
25th works best for me.
Are you okay?
Tuesday.
Tuesday? All right. Chair would consider a motion to have a special called budget work session meeting on March 25th, Tuesday, to discuss FY26 budget.
I'd like to add also at that meeting, the insurance consultant will be presenting the proposals for your review.
Okay, yeah, I saw it. Yeah, I'm sorry. And also have the, Mr. Aaron Hawkins with Robinson, Farmer, and Cox to present the 2024 financial report.
If that's the wishes of the board. He can either come to the special call meeting or the regular meeting in April.
I don't have a problem with it.
I'm coming.
All right, so. I guess then we have an amended motion for Mr. Carter to have it on Tuesday, the 25th, and then include Mr. Aaron Harkins from Farmer and Cox in that meeting.
All right.
And I believe that's okay since it hadn't been seconded yet. All right, so is there a second to Mr. Carter's motion? Second. Mr. Hips is seconded. Discussion? All right, motion been made and seconded to have our special called meeting for FY26 budget, including Mr. Aaron Harkins, on Tuesday, the 25th, at 6 p.m. Ooh, we didn't include that in the original motion, 6 p.m. We need.
That's right. Mr. Chairman, within that framework of that motion, we'll do the standard meeting time.
All right. And it's been seconded again, Mr. Hips. All right. Any further discussion? Mr. Wolfskill, your vote. Mr. Carter.
Aye.
Mr. Hibbs. I vote aye also. Mark your calendars, March 25th, 6 PM here. All righty. And then looking for a motion to adopt changes to the published FY '26 BIC calendar to do away with the meeting on April 15th and to have Monday, April 21st, which is our regular Board of Supervisors meeting to hold the public hearing on the FY '26 budget, and then have Wednesday, April 30th as our approval meeting for the FY '26 budget. Is there a motion to that effect?
I'll make that motion. And also request that staff send out a revised edition.
Of the FY '26
Yeah.
budget? Okay. All right, Mr. Carr's made the motion to change the budget calendar to delete April 15th, set budget public hearing on Monday, April 21st, and to set budget approval on Wednesday, April 30th. Is there a second? Mr. Wolfskill, second. Further discussion? Hearing none, call the question. Mr. Carter?
Aye.
Mr. Hibbs? Mr. Wolfskill? I vote aye also. So watch for your revised budget calendar from staff. All right, next is committee appointments. Please consider the appointment of Ms. Teresa Davis, Community Engagement Coordinator for Appomattox County, to fill the vacated seat of Ann Dixon on the Cortland Park Board. Staff recommends consideration of appointment Ms. Davis to fill the vacated seat on the Cortland Park Board.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Carter.
with great pleasure, I would make a motion to appoint Mrs. Teresa Davis to this position, as she is more than qualified, and it goes right along with her setting in the tourism department with the Cortland Festival Park.
All righty, is there a second? Second. Mr. Hibbs is seconded. Discussion? All righty, Mr. Carter, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Hibbs? Aye. Mr. Wolfskill? I vote aye also. So Ms. Davis has been appointed to the Cortland Park Board. All right, next up, consent agenda. The consent agenda includes approval of bills, minutes, supplemental appropriations, line item transfers, fund transfers, and any item on the consent agenda shall be removed from the consent agenda at the request of any board member prior to the vote on the consent agenda. Agenda items removed from the consent agenda will be considered by the board individually in order in which they were removed from the consent agenda immediately following consideration of the agenda. All right, any changes, questions, whatever on the consent agenda, or do I have a motion for approval?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as is.
All right, is there a second? Mr. Carter's made the motion to approve the consent agenda as printed. Mr. Hibbs has seconded. Is there any questions? Mr. Wolfskill, how do you vote on the consent agenda? Mr. Carter?
Aye.
Mr. Hibbs? I vote aye also. Consent agenda is approved. All right, next up is the attorney report.
Mr. Chairman, I have nothing for the public portion of this meeting. I do have several items in closed session.
All righty, I figured as much. All righty. Administrative report, Ms. Adams.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. You have the report in front of you, and also emailed it this afternoon in case you wanted to review it and submit any questions. We were supposed to have the audit presented at this meeting, and there was a discrepancy between some school numbers and what was in the audit. So Dr. Bennett and myself had a conference call last week with RFC, and they're in the process of confirming those numbers prior to presentation to the board.
That's good to know. Wouldn't want an incomplete audit submitted.
No, well, it was completed, but there was just some discrepancy, and you'll probably know once it's presented what that was. We had a courthouse construction meeting last week, and we put the tasks to date that are completed, and in the next 2 weeks, the task that will be completed, and we're looking at a projection date of July the 3rd to be able to complete that project. And I have some notes there pertaining to the Region 2000 Landfill Authority's meeting last Wednesday, and I had also followed up with an email after that meeting. There is something I'd like to draw attention to, the community center renovation. The Facilities Committee met, and this was presented to, I believe, the chairman of the Facilities Committee, a letter from the DSS Authority Board. And staff has developed some concerns about security at the center, and they are asking to be able to move back to the courthouse location. I think the Facilities Committee supported that decision, but it would be up for discussion with the board if there are any concerns at this time about that. If not, Mr. Shepherd will continue to work with Ms. Reed on what that footprint looks like and make a few minor revisions to what the board had already adopted. And the Appomattox landfill, I'm pleased to announce that Mr. Carey is back at work, the landfill supervisor, after his surgery. As all of you know, we had a cyber incident in the county, and we are still overcoming that, but making a lot of progress. I think Ace can attest to it's been quite a learning adventure for everyone. But in conjunction with that, we realized that possibly we should not have a shared network with the school system. So Dr. Bennett and myself have made a decision that it's probably best if we try to go ahead and create a division of that network. And so ACE is putting together a plan to make that transition. And at the same time, we reached out to VITA, which is a state IT agency, and they have a cybersecurity grant that possibly we can apply for funding to help offset the expenses of that transition. As far as the water planning, Mr. Rourke and myself, we went to Danville on February the 26th and met with the Department of Health Division of Drinking Water and had a conversation about current and future water needs. So you'll be hearing more about that in the next few months about different options that we can pursue, as well as we're planning to engage the town manager because in 2031 it would be a decision of the town about a water renewal contract. And Mr. Carter had alluded to, we have a community engagement coordinator, Ms. Teresa Davis, who accepted that position. She brings a wealth of knowledge in the market and tourism industry and development of materials to support promotion of the tourism industry. She's already met with several tourism partners. She attended the ATC committee meeting, Cortlandt Park meeting, and is actively developing ideas for local business support. And Mr. Rowe, as mentioned earlier, will be presenting the insurance renewals to the board for review. And then I have several other notes about other meetings attended, and we have other data from public safety as well as community development for review.
Okay, does board members have any questions, especially on the new DSS move, or?
Yeah, I do.
All right.
What does that mean? Agency feels it with the reduction. What is that referring to? Reduction in what?
We're looking at a model. There are 26 employees that original plan was based on. And we're looking at possibly just having a full staff of 20 workers so that we hopefully can compensate them at a higher rate because of the low salaries within the agency.
And the project over there is just on hold indefinitely, or not? What's the status of that? At the
What?
at the community center
Oh, that's on hold because
because of the safety concerns.
the DSS Authority Board felt that the Cortland, not only safety, but felt that the Cortland Street made more sense for them in the way that It was laid out, they've spent time going over there laying out, Jeff's redone the floor about 14 different times with tape to show them, and they, the DSS Authority Board made that they want to move back to their original location.
After all that,
I know, that's what I said.
I mean, okay, whatever. If
And-
that's what they want, they can have
Yeah.
it. but-
In the meantime, they had some vehicles that were vandalized,
Okay,
so that created concern among staff members.
sure, all right.
Any
Thanks.
other? Oop. All right, thank you, Ms. Adams. Other than that, the school financial report's attached for your reading enjoyment. Next, we have supervisors' concerns. This is a time for individual board members to share information with other members on the board and the public. Items presented as heading requiring action will be for a future meeting agenda or to request additional information from staff members. No item presented under this heading shall be acted upon at this meeting or without unanimous consensus of the board. Mr. Carter, what are your concerns?
None at this time, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Mr. Hibbs? No, sir. Mr. Whipsdale?
I'm gonna ask about Firefly, but other than that,
I was expecting it. All righty. I don't have any concerns either at the moment. After April 21st, I probably will. All right. Next is closed session. I move that the board enter in closed session for the limited purpose of, one, consultation with a legal counsel regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice related to the sale of publicly held land and located in the Appomattox River District. Number two, consultation with legal counsel regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice related to Region 2000. And number three, a discussion regarding assignment, appointment, performance of specific employees related to animal control. And number four, consultation with legal counsel concerning specific legal matters requiring the provisions of legal advice related to the VOTEC Center pursuant to section 2.2-3711, parentheses A, parentheses 8, and parentheses A, parentheses 1, respectively. Or were you supposed to read that?
Good, yes.
Is there a motion to such effect? Or I made the motion. Is there a second? Mr. Carter, how do you vote?
Ah,
Mr. Hips? Mr. Webscale? All righty.
the word limited is wrong.